everybody. My name is Shayna Weiss. I am the Associate Director of the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies. And I am thrilled to welcome you to the third season of Studio Israel. We have so many partners in this and a lot of really exciting speakers for you today. So what I'm going to do is just tell you a little bit about the partnership and introduce our speakers, and then we'll start today's program. Studio Israel, as I said, we are entering our third season. It's a partnership with the Hadassah Brandeis Institute, the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies, the Vilna Shul. It is made possible with support from Combined Jewish Philanthropies, CJP. It is also co-sponsored by the Consul Generate of Israel to New England. Today, we are also being co-sponsored by the Israel Museum and by Hebrew College as part of a new collaboration. And what we try and do here at Studio Israel is bring together artists, academics, and community leaders to learn about Israeli art, dance, food, music, and more, with a focus on Israel's diversity and the political connections between the arts and Israeli culture. So I'm really, really excited for this, and I'm really excited especially for today, where we're going to be talking about children's literature, illustration, youth culture, all sorts of exciting things. So as I said, I'm going to just introduce our two speakers and our moderator briefly, and then I will pass it over to them. First, we have Orna Granot. She is a curator, researcher, and lecturer who specializes in the history of illustration, children's illustrated books. She is the head of the illustration library, which is part of the Ruth Youth Wing Art Exhibition of Art Education, which is part of the Israel Museum. She is an internationally renowned curator. She lectures at B'Tzalel, Shankar College of Art and Design. She has many, many awards and accolades, and she has a MA in Children's Literature from Simmons in Boston, so excited for the Boston connection, and a BA in History of Art and Education from Hebrew University. Our next speaker will be Orit Bergman. She was born in Jerusalem, and she lives in Kerem Maharal. She writes and illustrates children's books. She adopts stories to theater, and she frequently meets with children across the country. She's been published in Israel, France, China. She's been translated in multiple languages. She has studied at B'Tzalel in Jerusalem and the School of Visual Arts in New York. She is now head of the Illustration Studies program at B'Tzalel. She has written dozens of books. I think we're going to hear about one of them today soon, and has won many, many awards for her illustrations and her writings. And our moderator today is Professor Jonathan Krasner. He is the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Associate Professor of Jewish Education Research on Brandeis University. His most recent book was about Hebrew infusion, language and community at American Jewish summer camps, which was co-authored with Sarah Benin Bonor and Sharon Avi. It won a National Jewish Book Award. I will not list his many other publications and awards, as they are many, but he is an expertise on American Jewish education, youth culture, gender and sexuality, and will be a perfect discussant for us today. So without further ado, I pass it off to our amazing speakers. Oh, and one more thing, sorry, we'll say one more thing. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. We will have time for questions at the end. And if you have any comments or anything else, please be in touch through the chat. Thank you.
So, hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks everyone. Thank you for all the partners from Boston, JArt, Hebrew College, and all of the guests. Thank you so much, Shayna and Laura. We are very excited about this new partnership, and it's actually, I hope it's a new beginning. We're very, very proud, and I'm talking we because I think it's Orit and I, to be the opening session for this marvelous series of lectures and presenting illustration side by side, very naturally, like we see it as part of many arts and exciting cultural things going on in Israel for us to be able to share. We're going to have a conversation when we go into depth to Orit's work, because she's a great storyteller and illustrator. But first, I want to put it a little bit in context, because I think the sense of the community is part of the story that J-Arts is trying to tell. And also in the Israel Museum, we share this vision. So I'm going to share my presentation as well. Wonderful. Can you see it? Is it, yeah, I think now you can, probably. Okay, yeah, Orit, can we see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So just to make this a little bit more exciting and visual, I will make my introduction aided by photographs. So just to bring you to Jerusalem, to the campus of the Israel Museum, the largest cultural institute in Israel, basically. It has a vast range of collections. We call it an encyclopedic museum. It has a very big archaeology wing with the Shrine of the Book, as it's a really pivotal location and space. A huge section, curatorial wing of arts, of Jewish arts and life cycle, and a very big arts wing containing not just Western art, but also art, non-Western art, such as Africa and Asia. The fourth wing of the Israel Museum is, to my opinion, the most unique wing. It's the youth wing. And the youth wing is also very unique in its kind, because it has its own exhibition space, and it has its own collection and a very, very wide range of activities of art education for many, many ages. So we have many outreach programs, and we host many kids with their families or with their classes. And I can't tell everything about the youth thing, but I want you to understand that what we're going to focus on really relates to that, to the sense of art and community intertwined together in this, hosted by this great container that is the museum. And inside the museum, inside the Israel Museum, inside the youth wing, we have a very special corner. I don't want to make a false impression that it's very big. It's actually very intimate and very cozy, but it's the illustration library. And the illustration library is very unique in the sense that it's a space, a place that holds a collection of books, cataloged, organized, and oriented by not the name of the author or not the name of the book, but by the name of the illustrator. You can see here, even with the little plaques, the colorful ones, it's the signatures. The signature is also a visual means that the illustrator signs the book and shows us that for us, and also for children, illustrations are the first form of art. Before we can read letters or sentences or words, we can read the images of a book, and we can tell ourselves a story without reading it with words, but reading the pictures. And this is the magic and the interest and the focus of this collection. We can't lend books, but people come to us, all ages, all sizes, and you can see here a soldier, and you can see a father and his son, and you can see also two kids on the beanbags. I know them very well because one of them is mine, and she was very, very young, and she couldn't read. She could read, she was in kindergarten, but she's reading. She's reading illustration. This is what she does, and this is what kids do. But we also have workshops and story hours, but also for educational staffs that come in and learn again how to read illustration with children, for children, how to be engaged with a critical point of view, not just say the illustrations are adorable or cute or I like them. Also, it's a space where we focus on this information and new kind of reading, because for children it's very natural, but for adults they need to learn it again, and how to communicate with kids about it and to broaden their horizons about this form of art. I brought here just also an example to see that it's a very wide range of uses and audiences. Here, it's a guide that guides in the Arabic language. He transformed the space of the library to something else, and he's telling a story in his different way. Here you see kids from various neighborhoods in Jerusalem looking at an exhibition of illustration of a very famous Israeli illustrator that also published many books in many languages. But I want to focus again and kind of narrow to depth our perspective for tonight, and this sponsorship and engagement of the Youth Wing about Israeli illustration. And since the library exists, we have not just a collection of rare books and original artworks, but also an award for Israeli illustration. The Israel Museum Award for Children's Illustrated Book was founded by the Ben Yitzhak Foundation, and for over almost 40 years, we have been given once in 2 years an award for original Israeli illustration. It's become really a legacy of quite a few generations that have grown into this very, very amazing list of artists that have won the award. And we also published a book about these illustrators, but we really try to foster it and to give there is always an illustration exhibition, and it's always about once in 2 years we have the award. This is the previous award. We're going to announce the next award, but today we want to focus on a very specific winner of the award, Orit Bergman, an amazing artist that already won our award twice, and in one of the books she illustrated a text that already existed before. The other one she won as an illustrator, but she was also an author. So this Orit is a very unique artist in the sense that she's both an illustrator and an author, and we will talk about it. But I just want to, again, to finish my elaborate introduction of this connection between Israeli illustration and our talk today, to say that we chose to begin and selected Orit because she is quite successful, also international. This is just an example that I knew that Orit did not include in her presentation, but Orit and I also worked on this together many years ago. This is the Bologna art fair of illustration and children's books. It's the biggest fair in the world, and the Israeli booth featured books from Israel, but kind of focused on Orit's work already many years ago because of her unique connection and artwork in mastering words and pictures together. So now I'm stopping my share. Yes, hopefully successful here. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Orit Bergman. She is a great artist, also a colleague in Bezalel, where we teach together. And now, before you upload share your presentation, I would just want to kick us off with the first, as a story starts, once upon a time, you have a beginning. So if you could just start us all off with your beginning, your roots, personal and artistic, where do you come from, and what is the core of your story as an artist, as an illustrator?
Okay, thank you, Orna. I am a visual person, so I'll share my screen right off from the start to talk about where I start from. And I'll start from my mother, who was a very prolific writer for children's books. She also wrote plays for the radio. She wrote many books, but one of the most important of her books is about her father, which is an interesting story because her dad was one of the first mariners and my grandfather in Israel, and he brought Jewish immigrants fleeing from the Nazi regime during the Second World War. This is one of the most famous boats he brought to Israel, so it's the new immigrants. And his last mission was to sabotage the oil refineries in Syria during the Second World War. At the time, it was under Vichy regime, and they left at 1941 and never came back. Nobody knows what happened to these 24 people. My mom, this is the last picture my mom has with her father. She was 4 years old when he was lost at sea. And I think this, really black hole in her life was something that she had to feel, and maybe feel with stories. Maybe this is the beginning of the storytelling in our family. I know that as a child, I too was telling the story of where was he gone? Where did he go to? So the book on the left is the book she wrote about her father. And the book on the right side is a book that my mother's uncle wrote about my grandfather as well. And this is actually an interesting story because his name is Nahum Gutman. He's quite a famous artist, Israeli artist, was at the time. And he did not only do art, but he also wrote books. This is his most famous book, Lo Ben Gulu Melech Zulu. And on the left side, you can see a picture he drew of my grandfather. And I was really influenced from him because you can see me on the right drawing as a child, and I used to draw with him. And you will see during the talk how he influenced my work musically.
So I think this is a great example in the sense that also the audience, some of the people are not familiar maybe with the history of illustration in Israel. And Nahum Gutman is, for us, is the founding father of illustration for children, editorial illustration, but also really, especially in this talk, in this context, a person that created art and illustration, that wrote and illustrated for children and for adults, and saw no purpose in denying himself from one pleasure or the other. So in this sense, it's a great also way to connect to the wider story that maybe we'll tell in another series about Israeli illustration, but that we're maybe planning together with J-Art. But now, if you can, Orit, you did a great job in sharing us your history, but tell us a little bit about you. As your dog is barking?
Yes, well done, Millie.
Actually, Orit and I we're planning sometimes a project about also dogs. So I know we have a history also with dogs. We already said in the introduction that you're a very prolific artist and illustrator, but I think in Israel, one of the most famous children's books, illustrated great children's books, the name of the book is Va'yeled hazeh oni, this kid is me. So now it's your turn and role to say Ha'me'ayer hazeh oni, this illustrator is me. So kind of share who you are and what you do and what's your kind of identity card as an artist, as an illustrator.
Okay, so first of all, I wrote 13 books in Hebrew. Some of them were published in China as well. Some of them are for toddlers, some of them are for older. These are for toddlers. So this is a series of books for toddlers, which first started in France, and then was published in Israel and in China. I also illustrate books that I don't write. I enjoy it very much, and I try my best to adjust my style to the text, as opposed to, I think, what happens in the States, where an illustrator has one style, one distinct style. I try to change it from one book to the other. Oops, sorry.
So this is again a very, what you just said, I think probably some of the people that are joining us today are maybe have a lot of knowledge about the American audience, and this is a huge difference, I think, in convention. I think Israeli illustration and Israeli illustrators are very, very versatile and very creative and invent themselves from book to book, and this, to my opinion, is a source of pride and a sign of really high level of art also and originality. So you've done a great job in presenting that. But again, I would like us to go a little bit deeper into this, the unique aspect of illustration, which is that it's really a combination of words and pictures. And yourself, sometimes you serve the text that you are handed by, it can be like the examples you have here, it can be also PJ library, it can be a very old text from Julian Tubim, is the Polish, I think, from the beginning of the previous century. It can be poets, it can be poems, but it's very different when you work as your own author. And if you can kind of give us a more concrete example of what's it like to wear both hats, be your own illustrator, be your own author, and how does it work?
Okay, so I'm going to do it by talking about a book based on my experience as a diver in the underwater observatory in Eilat, which is called Diary of a Shark Catcher. And the book tells the main character, Gal, in the book, sets out to find her father, who left the family when she was young, and is gone. And you can see that this story has connection to the first question that Orna asked me, because the search for a gone father is something that's really important in our family. So her father is very different. He didn't die. The parents divorced, and they lost their connection. And Gal sets out to find him, and the only place she knows where he used to be is the underwater observatory in Eilat. And here she goes there, and she gets a job of the mother of the fish. She has to feed all the fish in the observatory, which was my job as well. I'm showing both my illustration on the right and Nahum's Gutman illustration on the left of my grandfather, and you can see the straight connection, right? The very thin line and the writing around the character. And what I can do when I illustrate and write the text is that I can move, and I try to move as much information as I can from the text to the illustration, so that it becomes an integrated story. Here you can see the aquarium's hole, and this is where I used to walk and feed the animals. And I will tell you very, very briefly the real story of what happened to me, and you can see through the illustrations how the story is being told. So here you can see the different aquariums, and I used to take this dish with fish and feed each of the aquariums, and I always left to last this fish, the octopus, because I don't know if you know it, but octopi are very smart. And I always gave him riddles as the food. So I put his favorite food is shrimp. I put it in different types of bottles. And he would unscrew the bottle. He would always solve the riddle very easily and take out the fish or the shrimp and eat it. And that happened day after day until one day, I looked at the aquarium. I came to the aquarium and I didn't see it. And I thought, maybe I don't see him because actually know how to, I don't know, how do you say, become like a chameleon? Oh,
disguise themselves?
What? Yeah, hide themselves. But then I saw the quirk of the pipe, the water pipes that leads to outside of the aquarium, and I realized that I taught this octopus to open any quirk possible, and he ran away. Okay, so in all my books, I try to paint to draw maps. I love maps. Whoever was in the underwater observatory, you probably know this space. This is the area where the aquariums are. This is the area where all the water from the aquariums and from all the pools come up to a pool on the roof. And this is the shark's pool. You will see why I show it to you. And finally, I will show you one door which divides between the area of the visitors and the area of the people who work in the Andor Observatory. You will understand in a minute why I'm showing it to you. So you probably figured it out. So he unscrewed the filter, and he went through the pipes, and I was surprised to learn that octopus can fit into pipes the size of his eyes. So this is the size of my eye. Can I fit? I wish I could fit into a pipe this thin. And then finally, we found him on the pool on the roof. And we've decided this octopus deserved his freedom, and we set him free. But that same night, we decided that we have to get another octopus. We went diving for an octopus, and this is something that I show. This is illustration from the book, showing the underwater speech language in hands. Okay. And in the book, instead of talking, I write in this speech, and it says, "Stop, look there, an octopus is stuck." Okay, which is true. That's what we saw, and we took the octopus, we placed it in the aquarium. Remember, this is a real story that I'm telling you. And then I heard a terrible sound, as if like a faucet or a waterfall is opened somewhere in the observatory. I ran and I saw this. The window of one of the windows of the shark pools broke, and a gush of water with all the sharks inside flew outside, and there was a really shallow pool full of sharks, which in the dim light, because it was already night, I saw that they were suffocating. I didn't know that, but sharks need to swim in order to get air. They open their mouth, and then by swimming, they breathe. Anyway, we had to take them out and bring them to another pool. So yeah, true story. This is me. The water was up to the top there. So this is the window through which the sharks flew out. And these are images from the time I worked there. I won't get into all the details. And this is how it looks in the book. So what I do when I write and I illustrate, I try to integrate it as much as possible, and I also design the layout so that it will work well together. And I told you in the beginning that I work a lot with children. This is in China where the book was published. On the left, in the upper left, you can see how we are doing the language, the hand language talk. So yeah, this is one example.
So to me, this is really interesting to see how you are able to tell only you can tell this story and like that. In so many examples that while you were talking, I thought an author of words could have never kind of thought about the sign language being presented this way, or not combined words and pictures in such a way, nor mixed up true story, personal biography into a framing of what is basically a young adult novel that's very graphic. I don't think it's a graphic novel, but I think just for maybe our audience, it's important to try to frame it. But I think that so many details here are enrich the story and make it very concrete and personal. Because of this combination of you being an author and an illustrator. Even if you can quickly for us just go back to the cover of the book for me, because when the book won the award, it already won, and we were presenting it for the exhibition, and it took me a while. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but to understand what she did even with the cover. And I don't think if she weren't the illustrator, she could have thought about it, but you have so many layers of interesting things going on here from an artistic point of view of words. And the character is upside down, basically, because the whole book is about, scuba diving and going under the water and giving this sign. So it's already communicating with icons. And there's another character in the background that's kind of talking to the protagonist. So many things are going on in what's basically supposed to be only a graphic cover for a book, but it's really a very artistic, and it has even its own independent story standing alone as it is, and it really comes through. But I think we talked about it when we did kind of prepare the conversation, and it was on purpose that we selected a young adult material. So also our audience would kind of feel more connected maybe, but to a little bit more establish this point of author and illustrator, I would like you to kind of focus, because I do think that one of the things that if we want to kind of focus, and Jonathan will elaborate on that also from an international point of view, is your really unique perspective to childhood, into early childhood. So if you can just kind of talk a little bit about, unlike a young adult audience, how is it like to be an author illustrator of your own picture books for a very young age? Just give us a few examples, and here we will also see your more international side, I think.
Okay, so yeah, when I write and illustrate for really young children, for toddlers, I try to do as less as possible, to leave everything that I can take out of the text and bring it to the illustration, and to make the illustration minimal, because I think it's like haiku. It has to be really exact, and I will show an example. One of the books, this series of books is actually based on my children when they were young, and the elephant is the young character. He's based on my son, and the small bird is based on my daughter. And in this picture, she's telling him, I'm bigger than you. 3 days bigger. Bigger and older in Hebrew is the same word. So I'm older than you, 3 days older. That's why I get to go first on the swing. Okay, and you can see the relationship between them. And I will very, very quickly read through one of the books. It's really just a few sentences, and I will explain the things that lead me when I work. So do you want to pretend? Yes, I'm a turtle and I'm a rabbit. Let's have a race. Okay, I'll race you. I'm a deer. That's not fair. You can't switch. Why not? Okay, you can switch, but I'm not a rabbit. I'm a tiger and I'll eat you up. Ugh. Help! I'll run home and close the door. No tiger can get in. I've got a ladder and I'll come in through the chimney. If you come through the chimney, I'll catch you because I'm a lion. You can't catch me because I'm a lion tamer. Then I'm the ringmaster. And I'm the queen of the ringmaster. So I have an ice cream stand. An ice cream stand? I order you to give me vanilla ice cream. Here you are. This is an ice cream fit for a queen, because I'm the ice cream king. Okay, so 3 elements. I think they are the superpowers of childhood. Humor, play, and imagination is something that I always use in my books. And I think children are not in charge of so many aspects of their lives. And these 3 things help them feel that they can take control over their lives. And they're available for kids.
This is great. I just, before we kind of move on to the, I know we want to do also serious Q&A, but we do want to, I just want briefly for Orit to show us an example of how she really crossed the lines between the 2-dimensional books. We saw YA, we saw a board book, basically a picture book, and we'll see more as we go along, but definitely Orit did some very exciting projects in 3 dimensions. So if you could share a little bit how you cross the lines and
Sure.
show us.
So this is sketches for my puppet show based on the book that I just read to you. I always try to do very simple stuff. This is the tiger, and it's based on like a clip for laundry clip. And this is images from the play itself. When I go to 3D, I always start from 2-dimensional illustration and then play around with it. So let me take this down. So you can see that the images are 2-dimensional but 3-dimensional at the same time. And this is a play that is based on all these Toddlers books. And this is the big queen.
וואו, יושו, יצ'וקי, זה ממש טוב במחבואים. אני אתפס אותך!
So I think that here with the Toto and Friends becoming a theater, a puppet theater, you really show us how the principles that you spoke of, the playfulness and the imagination and the humor kind of come to life. But I want to, and maybe something this is, Jonathan will pick it up later, that I really think that from children's literature and educational point of view, for this age group, what you do is you combine really imagination with also a very concrete subject matter. You explain something, not necessarily in a scientific way like you do with the octopus, right, in the shark catcher, but you have a text and you have something that has to do with literacy, of understanding a context, and you bring it forth in a way and color and seduction that is right for the age, and it speaks to them in the same level, in the same way. And I think this is you really kind of catch them in this space. And the last example that maybe you want to give is from your previous project in the summer, where you maybe you show us the exhibition, because
yes, this is the first time that I illustrated in space without text, and the name of the exhibition, "What is more, a yellow or an elephant?" is a question, and of course a nonsense question. And the idea is that the viewers are walking through the exhibition, and while they're walking, they see different. They tell themselves the story of the exhibition, and they see the images from different points of view, and every point of view, things look very different. So this was a real nice challenge. I loved it.
For me as a curator, you can really see your attitude and a unique perspective as a storyteller, bringing the story into the space, kind of narrating it with movement and existence in space. I hope that, I mean, these are great pictures, but I hope the people that see them kind of feel it and kind of understand the narration and transformation of a space into this imaginative story coming to life. So I think maybe, Jonathan, is this a good time for us to kind of maybe pick up on some questions from the audience?
Yeah, sure.
Because we have prepared more, but we want to hear, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's probably a good time for questions. So Orit, okay. I was going to say, you want to put it back up for a second?
Sure.
So actually one of our audience members was wondering about the influences on you, particularly with this kind of work that you're showing us, and with the mobiles, the puppets, particularly wondering about Alexander Calder and whether Alexander Calder had any influence on you, or whether there were other artists that may have had an influence on you.
So first of all, this exhibition is made with Anat Warshawski, which it's a collaboration. And yes, of course, Calder is and his circus is a great influence.
We couldn't show everything. She has an amazing work about circus also.
That's great. That's great. So
one thing I had to show, I don't know, can you see this in the video?
Maybe if you stop sharing, it'll be larger for everybody.
Right. So what was important for me, and it's also something that I learned from theater, is that everything has to be really small and to fit into an envelope. So all this big exhibition fits into nothing, which is kind of nice, I think.
It's it in IKEA, packaged.
Yeah, packaged. But yeah.
That's
yeah,
great. That's really great. So I wanted to once again invite people to put their questions in the Q&A. And while we're waiting for more questions, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the chameleon that's, well, I'm on blur, so you can't see it, but the chameleon that saved Noah's Ark, because that book is probably familiar to some of our American audience, because it was included in the PJ Library series. And I know that it was included both in Israel and in America. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how that book came to be included, and just a little bit about the book, which is, to my mind, a really delightful and fascinating tale.
Okay. Okay, I'll share the screen again. I think, oh, no, I'm not in the right place, right? Sorry. Let me try again. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, The Chameleon That Saved Noah's Ark is a book that I illustrated. It was written by Yael Mochowski, and I think she wrote it especially for PJ Library in Israel. And she specifically asked for this style of illustration after she saw the book about the train that I did for Julian Tuvin. And I loved it.
That won the award.
That won the award. And I really love the story. One thing that I really love to do is to illustrate animals. I think that with animals, there's much more freedom for the illustrator, because if I move the nose of a person or the eyes location, that everybody goes, whoa. But with animals, it's fine. You can do whatever you want. So yeah, so I love that. I love this this work. And the first thing that I had to do is choose Noah. And this was my first sketch for Noah. I wanted him to be as black as possible. And I started out with that, and they kind of went with it, but they asked me to make him a little bit lighter, which was an interesting conversation, because they had all sorts of religious ideas about why he shouldn't be black. But I was really glad to do this, to have him be like Yemeni style. And then I did his wife really a redheaded. And the first idea was she would be a redheaded just because it's so beautiful to have these colors together. But it became part of the story, because then all the children are mixed. Yeah.
Great. Some of the people who have commented on the book, some of the critics, have talked about the rich kind of dark palette that you use in this book. Was that something that was conscious? Were you trying to, I don't know, simulate the water and the flood? I mean, what was going through your mind when you chose the color palette that you did?
Oh, that was actually really difficult, because if you think about being in the stomach of a ship, it's all the same color, right? It's all going to be brown. So I've decided it's not going to be realistic, because it would be too boring and too depressing. And I just made it as colorful as I could. Yes, because otherwise it would be too bleak. And it's a nice story. It's a happy story.
It's a really rich. The illustrations are extremely rich, and as you pointed out, the interracial nature of Noah's family was something that was commented on by some of the critics in the United States as well. You may or may not know that there haven't been a lot of books specifically for Jewish American children that have had interracial families. I know that PJ has actually tried to publish some more diverse books. I don't know if you're familiar with the illustrator Melissa Awai. She illustrated 2 books for PJ Library by Chris Barish, both of which have an interracial family as their, as sort of the protagonists of the book. I'm wondering about in Israel. Is it unusual to portray an interracial family? Was there any comment on it in Israel when the book came out?
There wasn't any comment about it, but when I illustrate for PJ Library, I know that it will enter all the houses in Israel, which is amazing. It's much bigger than in the United States. And I always try to do something which is to educate, either in the style of the illustration or to say something. And this is why I did this. I'm sure it wasn't accepted well everywhere, but I didn't get any comments about it. It just in the beginning when I really made his skin very black. But other than that, that was fine. I think, Orna, maybe you have more ideas about it.
I think that every time for me, because of the Simmons background also and what I know about the American discourse, and I'm very jealous because these conversations are not happening in Israel openly and actively as they maybe should, or the way that they happen in America. So this is definitely something that we should, I think these examples that I'm not surprised that this came from Orit. The whole idea is, for me, is when you give a great illustrator a text, it can become so much more through his perspective, artistically, and the originality is part of the DNA of great illustration. And I think so many times children's literature is constrained and held back by tradition and by norms. And it's almost the opposite. The artists are taking it to an opposite way, to an opposite direction. And I think I think children are very controversial in their behavior. They check boundaries, and they're intrigued when it really happens in their culture or world and examples. So they get it, and they should get it. And they're, but it's the adults that are almost the gatekeepers of these radical ideas. And it can be, and so many times creativity can spur great politics. So I'm a strong believer in great illustrators that are empowered to bring forth their artistic agenda as a creative source of so many of our problems, just through these humor, playfulness, and all these superpowers that Orit mentioned. And yeah, in this sense, this model of author-illustrator, I think has a lot of promise and has so much to offer to the politics of a great art for children in culture, not just in illustration. This is why I think, again, and this is why we took the time to sort of show board books and YA and theater and exhibitions, so to see how it can, change the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as long as we were talking about the diversity aspect of the books, it reminds me of another famous author illustrator, and that would be Ezra Jack Keats, who of course won the Caldecott Medal back in the 1960s for The Snowy Day, which really broke a lot of barriers here in the United States in terms of representation of African American kids in children's illustrated books. I'm wondering, Orit, as long as we're talking about this book and maybe talking about how you would approach somebody else's written text. I know that there are some folks in the chat who are wondering about. You said in this case that the author had some specific ideas about how they wanted the pictures to look, or even why you were chosen. Could you maybe talk a little bit about how you approach when you're taking a text that was written by somebody else, how you go about illustrating a text like that?
Yeah, so the author chose me because she wanted this specific style. And then first we talk about the story, and usually what I do is I start by doing sketches in black and white, just in pencil, and then we have another meeting, and she gives me her comments, and then it depends on the author. She gave me a lot of freedom. She didn't have that many comments, but sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. When I do my own story, I tend to change the story during the time that I illustrate, because when I illustrate, I understand things about the story, and then I change the story. So it's like an ongoing process. But of course, in this case, I can't do it. So yeah, that's the main difference, I guess.
No, it's definitely, it comes with its own set of challenges, I'm sure. But it is interesting to think of it as sort of like a marriage a little bit between an author and an illustrator. And, I think probably some of the best books are books where you really have a kind of creative, I don't know, synthesis or alignment or something like that. So did you feel like...
Many times we do, I think it's this marriage that you're talking about is a great example, because it takes a lot of acquaintance, a very deep acquaintance between author and illustrator, in this sense of an author and illustrator know each other very well, knowing boundaries and capabilities, but also allowing this freedom, allowing to really go the work of art to go as it should between words and pictures. And I think this is something quite unique about illustration, that there is a synthesis, like you said, a marriage between image and letter. In this very, very deep sense, it's very human. And we all, when we hear a story, we imagine it. This is what kids do, but we also do it whether we are aware of it or not. So this gestalt is, I do think that illustrators know it better than any others, this magic, to bring it also to us. I mean, talking about myself, that I don't have this ability to create this vocabulary, this world, to imagine the details.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perfect note to wrap things up, reminding us of not just about the history of these illustrations, where they fit in Israeli culture, in international Jewish culture, but also reminding us adults that there's something to be gained, right, from this marriage of word and picture, and also a sense of play and wonder about the world around us. So I really want to thank Orit, I want to thank Orna, I want to thank Jonathan for making today possible. I want to thank our many, many sponsors and organizations that work with us. Our next Studio Israel will be December 1st. We are going to hear from Aveva, an Ethiopian Israeli artist. You heard her music earlier today. You can find her, I believe, on Spotify. So again, just thank you all so much for joining us today, and to thank especially to Orit and Orna. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you again in December.